we're talking about the difference between the Trump administration second term and what hypothetically would have been the Kamala administration. And the war machine effort, the thing that Trump ran on was ending wars, right? Ending particularly the Ukraine conflict, the Ukraine proxy war. He ran on being a peace president. We know how that's going in the Middle East overall, like exact opposite of that. How can we just ask ourselves, just kind of step back from the two-party duopoly here and just kind of look at the shift, the massive shift that happened with Trump on the military budget. I want to get your take on this, Don, because we saw this complete 180, where at first Trump wants U.S., China, and Russia to cut military spending in half. That was the peace language, the peace president vowing to end just kind of take down that budget where, and I'm going to let me just get this thing off of the top so people can see it. That sometimes becomes an issue of just a mathematical problem. Trump promises $1 trillion in defense spending for next year, $1 trillion. And he's saying this standing next to Netanyahu. That's not just somebody who put that picture there. He literally announced this an hour before Netanyahu showed up on the red carpet treatment, and the two of them posing there as Trump does the opposite of this. So my question to you, Don, is, considering all of the different 180s happening here with Trump, who's calling the shots here? Who's really in charge? Is it Trump? Is it the billionaire class? Is it Israel? Who's in charge of our military decisions and budgeting and day to day? Who's actually running stuff?
Well, okay. First, proposing cuts and following a regular budget track, they're not mutually exclusive.
Sure.
It's interesting to see someone propose cuts altogether. There's a lot hidden in that, by the way. and there's a number of things. For example, over time, I recall, I remember who it was, Carter, maybe even Reagan, proposing to do away with nuclear weapons to the Soviet Union and U.S. disarm nuclear. And the Soviet Union being reluctant to do that because they had a severe disadvantage in the context of a conventional war. They're surrounded, and so the battlefield those planning strategies really bore heavily on them. If they didn't have a nuclear deterrent, there was nothing to stop the West from just basically bombing the shit out of the Soviet Union with one wave after another conventional weapons and marching from every corner and taking as much territory as they could. And so, you have Japan and Korea and Europe and the United States, all India, the whole bit. The same is with, you're looking at issues with respect to, a gross disarmament proposal might be a great idea. Okay, let's cut it in half. So what does that look like? Well, you could cut it in half by, for example, not buying any more weapons, period. That's not how it's going to go.
Sure.
You can cut it in half by not paying any more soldiers, and that's not how it's going to go. You could cut out, say, the nuclear triad. I don't know how much of a savings you would get. Let's say the whole delivery system. We don't need to maintain all these missiles and bombers anymore. Whatever it is, some aggregation of elements of these different things would be proposed, and there's a million different configurations that you could propose. Some are going to carry military advantages and disadvantages for one or more of the parties involved. Certainly, each of the parties proposing these things is going to be well aware of that and going to be proposing things that look great to the public, and of course provide them a military advantage to be exploited, at some later date. The possibility exists that if you cut the budgets in half, you're more likely to have a war. Now, if you do away with nuclear weapons, you're more likely to have a global war. All of these things are part of the reality of this. I don't think it's an excuse for not doing it. I do think that when we look at how these things are treated in the media, we have to look at it, through the lens of this reality, though. And so when I'm looking at Trump, one last piece of this, I don't know what the budget was. Biden's last military budget was somewhere in the vicinity of $985 billion. In other words, just shy of $1 trillion.
Just shy of the trillion, yes.
And I know that my property taxes and the cost of food, gasoline, and everything else, restaurant bills. I don't know if people have seen restaurant bills almost double in the last 2 years or something. All of that. I don't think the increase to $1 trillion military budget, in fact, is keeping up with inflation over last year's budget. It may actually be a cut in real dollars.
Wait. So you're saying that the $1 trillion hike is not aligned with
not a hike. Not a hike. $1 trillion budget.
The hike to $1 trillion, you're
Right.
saying, is not aligned with keeping up with inflation. Therefore, you could make the case that it's actually lowering our budget.
No, well, in real dollars. I'm saying that the last year's budget is like $985 billion.
Yeah.
You're talking about like a $15 billion increase over, in essence, $1 trillion budget.
From a peace president. From a president
from whatever
who ran on
okay.
cutting.
All right. So the budget goes through the Congress. Okay. What was it called? Hang on a minute. There's a thing called Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act that was passed in 2017 when Trump was talking about sanctions relief for some of the people that we were, squeezing. When he was talking to Korea, and when he was attempting to talk with President Putin and Russia, and while he's blustering at Iran, some people concerned that he was going to be talking with Iran also about some kind of sanctions relief or other. They passed a bill through both houses almost unanimously, way in excess of veto override, saying, in essence, no sanctions relief for Russia or Iran or North Korea unless we say so. The vote was like 411 or something in the House and like 98 or something, 97 in the Senate, way past the 2/3 necessary for an override. In essence, major shifts in foreign policy, major shifts in terms of our military posture, etc., are not going to be done through the budget process. They're going to be done through a much larger political process that changes the dynamics politically. This reckless, crazy president is going to hack away at the military budget, just like he's hacking away at the budget for our U.S. aid and everyone else. You see how all that's being treated? Mm-hmm. How the fuck do you think they're going to treat the military budget, which is the golden honeypot of the entire purpose of this empire? That's where the money is. He ain't going to be able to do it like that. So I don't know what he really intends. It's a whole other matter.
Yeah.
For all I know, he's Satan and intends to do a world war and have idiots like us supporting him on the way. I don't know.
But what I'm suggesting, Don, in the question of who's in charge is that maybe he doesn't really have a say in this at all. He's just and I guess it really depends on, I want to put this up because this is about the money that was being made as Trump is posting about the stock market crash. Here's a good time to buy when it's low. And then he's congratulating the billionaires in the room. this is how you interpret this clip really shows how we look at how the system's run. Is this Trump? And I'm asking the viewers to, if you haven't seen this, or maybe you have, but watch it with an open mind. If your wife's watching at home, who's in charge when Trump is congratulating his billionaire friends? Is he the one doing this, or is he doing it on behest of them? Who works for who? That's the question. Here we go.
This is Charles Schwab. It's not just a company, it's actually an individual. And he made $2.5 billion today, and he made 900 million. That's not bad. He's in financials. I've always been following.
Okay, so obviously we saw a lot of the mainstream take that and go, look at him. He's, he got Adam Schiff on the Democrats. He's saying we got to start a campaign to get this guy out. This is worth we got to impeach. No president should have this power. I look at that clip, Don, and I think there's no power in that room under Trump. He's working for them. And this is the same. We would have seen the same thing in 2009 if there was Twitter or Truth Social back then, and somebody was filming in the corner when Obama was congratulating his bankers who were assigned to him to tell him what to do when it came to the housing market crash, which was the same principles involved. Make sure that you buy when it's low, and make these guys a bunch of money. Who is in charge in this room?
What you just saw has nothing to do with what Obama did. Well, this is after the fact. Trump did whatever he's doing. The announcements about tariffs and all of that, which he announced while he was running, he was going to do, by the way. The people in that room saw what he announced. Whatever they do to have policy actualized, because I don't doubt that he, like every other person in that city, pretty much is on somebody's payroll or not. I don't. That aside, he did what he said he was going to do, and he started this whole thing about tariffs, and he's trying to negotiate with different countries to redivide the division of labor, of manufacturing and industry and all of this crap, but across the planet. And what happened as a response to it, when the markets happened, it had already happened at the time they were in that room. Those people not only know what happened, and not only knew what was going to happen, most of them had their hand in it. This is what I was trying to explain before. The market is those guys. Your money, they vote it. You don't vote it. We independent investors, whoever we might be, very rarely, maybe people doing day trades, for what that's worth. But the bulk of this is traded institutionally, no matter who owns the actual equity. And so the manipulation of prices, when it's done particularly hand in glove with the media, like Bloomberg and CNBC and CNN, et cetera, those things are going to happen all by themselves, no matter what the fuck comes out of Trump's mouth. And what comes out of his mouth after the fact to this room full of people, I don't see the conspiracy there. What he's trying to do is grab some sort of, you got every moron in the universe saying that he's an idiot and doesn't understand anything about finance or business. You see, he's filed bankruptcy 4 times. What he's doing is irresponsible and crazy and all this kind of shit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's, 24/7 across the media. He's like, oh, by the way, while you people are all talking this crap, the guys who run the industry here, they made money. They know what's going on. That's what that is.
Which is different than Obama in 2009, you said?
That's different. Obama was hired to help close the theft of all the things that happened prior to the collapse. The war, you had 2 waves of this, right? Yeah, 3 waves, really. You go back to like my first, let's say, intercourse, involvement with mortgages was in the early 70s when I went into the title insurance business. And I'll use New York State as an example, because banking at that time was almost entirely a state business, state industry. Banks were licensed by the various states, primarily and particularly mortgage banks. You had federal insurance of mortgages, FDIC, insured deposits. You had Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA mortgages, FHA mortgages, et cetera, but individual entities or even chains of banks were state enterprises. They were licensed by the states. They were subject to the banking departments in the individual states. The legislation affecting banking, how it worked, was state business. Large part of the mortgage business was savings and loans, or building and loans, as they called them also, which was basically the depositors in the community bought shares in the bank by depositing. It didn't really change hands, but that was in essence what was happening. And then that money that was on deposit was loaned out to people for homes. And there would be a note and a mortgage signed by the borrower at the closing that was then delivered first to the recording office, so the public knows the mortgage is a lien on the property, and then would go to the bank, and it would be in a metal file cabinet in the president's office or in the vault or whatever, physical document. It's an asset. This $100,000 mortgage against half of the downtown back then, it is a physical asset of the banks. And when we're sitting here saying, what's this bank worth? We count up the face value of those things, among other things. That changed. Interest rates were fixed by the state. This is the important part. And at the time I first got involved in 1972, 73, it was 8.5% fixed rate mortgage in New York was residential, first home buyer mortgage. That was it. You couldn't charge more than that, or it was criminal usury. Banks at some point in time decided they weren't making enough money in that. Also, some very wealthy people decided they really didn't like the model of locals owning banks when they wanted to own all of them. And so a number of things happened both in the legislative front and also in terms of capital freezes and strikes that led over time first to a collapse of the savings and loans in the 1980s, where all kinds of fraud was done, and some very powerful people were involved in the fraud, including the Bush family, and no one really paid for that. And then once the business had been pretty much restructured so that these were now national and transnational entities that were the banks, like Chase and Citibank and like that. They went to a almost like a fee-based model for making money in the mortgage market. Number one, they charged fees for an application, for almost everything that happened over the course of obtaining a mortgage. Points, all kinds of other devices where they front loaded some of the interest costs and things where they would get cash at the beginning, or a severe discount in what they were paying. And it was rather, you're going to borrow $100,000, I'm going to charge you $10,000. Instead of you give me 10,000, I give you 100, I just give you 90 and you owe me 100. Whatever it was, that's called discounting. Because I'm going to turn around and now sell this mortgage to somebody for $90,000, for $100,000, and I still have the $10,000 you gave me. Because they were making money outside of the mortgage performing as a viable loan. In other words, you've got one model where I lend you money with an interest rate that's profitable for me, and you make regular payments for 30 years. I have a predictable cash flow here, and that's the value of this thing. I made a lot of money on that money I loaned you. They went away from that model. We don't give a frig if you pay it off or not 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, because we're going to dump the paper, your mortgage, into some big corporate pot out there. We make our fees up front, and then we make money when we sell the mortgage into this pot.
Yeah.
And so what happened was we didn't really care how good the appraisal was or how creditworthy the borrower was or a whole lot of other crap, even if the house existed in some cases.
Oh, yeah.
That we closed the loan and booked the fees, and everybody got their commissions in the office and everything else. And so that is what led to 2007, 2008. That and other things that inflated the real estate market. So before Obama comes in, the feds are looking at either the banking system collapsing or not just FDIC, but even more federal money going in to stand it up. And they went that summer in 2008 through a number of machinations in the Congress, including the Congress voting down a bailout. And because the Democrats were voting against the bailout. And Barack Obama, who was about to be, he just clinched the, what do you call it? The nomination.
Got the nomination. They
lobbied the Democrats in the Congress and basically forced them to vote for the bailout. So it turned out to be about $500 billion in the short term was handed to them, courtesy of Obama and Bush working together, because Bush had to sign the check, but Obama, bullied the Democrats in Congress or whoever his puppeteer was, but he was the face of it. And then when he became president, he gave them, I think Glenn Ford calculated it was an additional $1.5 trillion in the first year.
Yeah, it was the too big to fail. That was the spin on it. But and again, I appreciate going through each element, and I just want to be clear, I wasn't making a literal comparison
to
what was going on in the housing industry in 08-09 to what's happening right now with the tariff war and all it's totally two different things economically. I was just saying, Don, that the comparison to me is you get rid of the old guard, you bring in the new one, and there's this idea that you've changed something when it's about the face changing. And then, like you said, that was the key part you said, was that you took the Democrats who were against when Bush was going to do it, and you switched them around and said, oh, now it's a Democrat leader, a guy that looks like us because he looked like us, and now you can get the thing done that you kind of ran out of gas on the Cheney Bush regime, and you had to switch it up. So I'm seeing something similar here, where Trump, although looks like he's coming in, being a person of the people are excited. We're taking on the deep state. When he gets in there, you're in that same room, you're in that White House, and you're talking to your bankers, and you're telling them what's happening. But are you telling them, or are you working for them? That was my only comparison. Two different economic scenarios. But that was where I was just kind of drawing that. But I think this is a very deep conversation we can continue in future episodes or future conversations on different shows that we go on. And I do appreciate everything all the details you bring on this discussion, Don. It's very insightful and much appreciated. Because we do have to get on with the rest of the show. Any last thing you want to leave us with on your way out?
No, I appreciate it. It's good to see you and nice talking, and I look forward to the next time. Look, at the very beginning, I said this to you and Pasta, that there wasn't a revolution. Mm-hmm. So those billionaires are the same billionaires that were billionaires last year and the year before and the year before and the year before, and the government is in their control. Maybe not those particular characters, but that class dominates, pretty much everything in this empire. And so, until you start, and even if they started dragging some of them out, I'm not advocating this, even if they started dragging some of them out and stringing them up or, off with their heads or whatever they would do, even if it was, determined and proven that this is the whole class of them, unless you do away with the class itself, not just the members of the class, but the job description, influential billionaire, unless you do away with it, You just, it's deck chairs on the Titanic. So we haven't seen really that kind of fundamental change. Again, just to me, the thing that was really important up until we got rid of Presidents John Kirby and, the lot of them that went out with Biden and Harris was that we don't have a nuclear war with Russia or a major war with Russia or anyone else, like that kind of a war where they start blowing up the big stuff and try to work from there, which is where we're at now for as long as this window is open. And so we do have a lot of work, and I'm sure Trump is not on our side for most of it. Yeah. But we got to make sure also we keep the window open lest Kirby and them come creeping back in and push the button. That's also a concern right now.
Yeah. Don DeBAR, thanks for staying on top of everything globally. Just, the humanitarian element too, which is so important. We have these very thoughtful discussions. Thank you so much once again, and tell people where they can find you.
Okay. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, what is it? Telegram, and Truth, whatever they call that Trump thing. Don DeBAR, this right here.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. And I'm going to say one last thing. It just hit me. I need to tell you this on our 100th episode. You were the first. We communicated. You'd been on the show a couple times. First time I ventured outside of the once a week, because we used to just do the show once a week. That was it. Just very safe and just very, focused.
Regular.
It was, breaking news. It was when Trump got the first assassination attempt. I remember we were reaching out to each other, and I said, do you want to do this? Let's cover it.
Yeah, that's right. We did. Yeah.
So you helped us get out of our shell of that first, we have to only go once a week. That's it. And it allowed us to kind of expand. And while things are happening, let's cover it in real time. Let's figure this out. So I wanted to give you a shout out to that. You got us out of that safety zone and went into it. So that was awesome. And thanks. And it's been very inspiring ever since as well. So
thanks, Matt. You take care of yourself. Okay, I'll see you around.
You too. Okay.
Yep.
Bye.